Let's move on to the very first story. The Chief Investment Officer of Axis Pension Trust, Nana Wiafe Boama, says but for the timely intervention of the Bank of Ghana in streamlining the financial sector, the company would have lost clients' investments to some collapsed banks. Speaking to Joy Business at the Axis Pension Trust Forum held in Accra, Mr. Wiafe Boama indicated that the financial sector cleanup exercise was a blessing. Fred Duhu was there and has come through with this report.
The Chief Investment Officer of Access Pensions Trust, Nana Wiafe Boama, at a pensions forum held in Accra, stated that they have made all attempts to retrieve investment from some collapsed banks, but have been unsuccessful over a year until the Bank of Ghana intervened with the cleanup.
We do a lot of due diligence before our investments, so pretty much, we're unscathed by the fallout from the financial sector. We had an exposure to one of the banks that were consolidated into CBG. But then, like government and the Ministry of Finance gave assurances, none of our beneficiaries lost anything because government covered that exposure by way of issuing bonds. So pretty much covered in that regard.
So you will say government intervention actually solved the situation?
It was a blessing. It was a blessing. But for government intervention, I'm pretty sure we may have struggled to retrieve that money from that singular bank that went under.
The director in charge of planning, research, monitoring and evaluation at the National Pensions Regulatory Authority, Ernest Amate Vondi, says the informal sector must be roped into the pension scheme to make members secure when they can no longer work.
It looks like, on average, it's barely about 15% of active Ghanaian workers contribute to the various the mandatory pension schemes. We need to do far better than we are doing. The drive of the regulator has been to see how we can encourage people who are in the informal sector, who form in excess of 85% of our active workforce, to also contribute to the various pension schemes. In their case, the law says that they can only contribute on voluntary basis. So what we have done is to do as much as we can to educate them. Let them see the importance, the relevance of contributing to pension schemes so that they don't keep working till they drop dead. At a point, they have to exit their active working life and be able to enjoy some pension. He
indicated that the authority is considering flexible means to make it possible for people to contribute over mobile money platforms. Fred Duho's report for Joy Business.
Now, chartered accountants have been urged to maintain high ethical standards in their line of work. The Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Reverend Daniel Ubami Tete, who was speaking at the Second Institute of Chartered Accountants induction, commended the Institute of Chartered Accountants for recently taking action against some of its members that did not ensure ethical standards in dealing with 7 collapsed banks.
Not to be underestimated. According to the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Reverend Daniel Ubami Tete, the regulator of the capital markets depends largely on accountants to regulate the financial space. He therefore entreated them to abide by ethical standards always. Reverend Ubami Tete lauded the Institute for dealing with 4 of its members for non-compliance with ethical standards.
I would like to commend the Institute for sanctioning 4 audit firms for non-compliance with auditing standards during their audit of 7 banks who were placed under receivership in 2017 and 2019 by the Bank of Ghana. This is a highly commendable action and worthy of emulation. And I urge you to keep it up, to weed out unfit accountants and thereby promoting the integrity of financial statements signed by our auditors and consequently the integrity of our financial market.
He further urged finance managers to find other alternatives in financing their businesses instead of always relying on the banks.
It is an incontrovertible fact that it takes long-term finance, that is patient capital, to finance growth and expansion of enterprises. I would therefore like to invite and challenge our new chartered accountants to seriously explore and tap into the capital market for alternative financing, especially medium to long-term instruments to finance business expansion and also ensure that their businesses achieve the appropriate finance mix or capital structure for profitable operations.
Reverend Tete has urged accountants to uphold their integrity to avoid any action that will ridicule the reputation of the institute. Alberta BC's report for Joy Business.
Now, the much talked about National Development Bank is now set to be operational from January next year. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has been giving more details about the bank in the following report by George Wiafe.
2019 budget disclosed that government has made significant progress in establishing this new National Development Bank. This was after it accepted the report by a technical committee that a wholly new bank should be established rather than merging NIB and ADB to create this National Development Bank. In a fresh interview with Joy Business, the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has been giving us more details about this bank in terms of focus and structure.
The National Development Bank, I think we are on course of that with the World Bank, and that will create a wholesale institution that will be able to then support other financial institutions to do the work that they have to do, especially in the SME sector.
Are you bringing some banks together or be a creation of a new bank?
That's the creation of a new development. It's a wholesale bank. You know, if you look at like the KfW example in Germany, you get a sense of where we are going. Private banks, I'm not sure. Sure. It's finding ways to make sure that we bridge the gap between our savings and our investment needs, and what structures you place in place to cascade in private sector money, which is usually situated outside. And so that's the type of vehicles that we should create. I mean, such vehicles can then be put on the market later anyway, but given the plan we have and the need to bring in the appropriate capital, we think is the way to go.
Government, with the assistance from the World Bank, should help with an initial capital of about 400 million Ghana cedis to set up this bank. We also understand that the bank will help raise long-term funds in the private sector to aid national development in the areas of agric and industry.
Meanwhile, CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries, Seth Chuma Kwabwa, says he expects government to allocate more funds to facilitate implementation of the One District, One Factory initiative in 2020. He was speaking on the business edition of PM Express on JoyNews, where he proposed a number of ways industry can keep up with the ever-changing business and economic environment. Government has already proposed to roll out a development bank and to aid industrialization and agric by 2020. Seth Chuma Kwabwa also backs this initiative, saying it is a step in the right direction.
Government has talked about the 1D, 1F initiatives and all that. We think so far, gradually it is coming up. We see the factories being set up, but our enthusiasm about it, that we see so many factories set up, has not fully been harnessed and realized, because we don't have a lot of money pumped into it. We think that some funds should be earmarked for industries so that you can tap into it to expand. Bear in mind that the 1D, 1F business factories, for example, are largely startup factories. And for startups, getting money from the conventional banks, and doing long-term investment is difficult. So you really need an investment fund which is driven by government or other agencies that is development oriented to be able to tap into it. Because commercial banks, they ask for your 3-year, 4, 5 years history, records, and then look at your cash flow and all that. But if you're a startup, how are you going to do it? So you need to have a development fund. And I think that in the budget, let's make good provision for that and have an arrangement that will enable the businesses access it.
Let's turn our attention to the agric sector. As Ghana's chocolate consumption rate plummets below 1% on a national average, the Ghana Export Promotion Authority is boosting the consumption of chocolates in the maiden edition of the Africa Cocoa and Chocolates Expo. CEO of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, Ifua Asabia Asare, tells Joy Business her outfit, in partnership with cocoa producers and manufacturers, is targeting consumption as a major strategy of increasing export margins. Charles IT has more.
Here with a basket full of cocoa pods. Now, this is not a typical cocoa farm that you might want to see. This is a miniature cocoa farm at the maiden edition of the African Cocoa and Chocolates Expo. And of course, it's all got to do with the consumption of cocoa and the export of cocoa by the Ghana Export Promotion Authority, especially when cocoa remains a main cash crop here in Ghana, which brings huge export earnings to the country. I got in touch with the Chief Executive Officer of GEPA, Madame Efua Asabi-Asare, to engage her on what exactly necessitated this particular expo and what she's going to be expecting in terms of GEPA in the short to medium term when it comes to consumption of chocolates in Ghana.
So we realized that anytime we travel, we get asked a lot about the cocoa derivatives like chocolates, cocoa drinks, cocoa liquor, and all of that. People really, the little that we take with us, people are so interested in these little bottles or few pieces of chocolate that we send with us. So we thought that we should bring all the manufacturers together. We should also encourage a lot more people to go into the production of cocoa derivatives, because we realize that we export the raw cocoa outside. They use it to do all these things and bring them back to sell to us.
Taking a closer look at the theme is about innovation and consumption.
Yes.
Regarding innovation, you have visited most of the stands. What has been your impression?
I am so surprised about the way chocolate is being packaged now. Yes, I've seen a lot of the young people and their organizations and the way they've packaged the cocoa. For me, it is a departure from what we used to see, and that's very encouraging.
How do you hope this could be prepped up, especially with expos like this?
Yes, if we are able to talk to the powers that be to start giving them out to the school children as part of the school feeding program, I think that will go a long way.
When I visited the miniature cocoa farm, I saw cocoa pods there. Many people haven't seen a cocoa pod ever in their lives. Do we see this being replicated across other regional capitals in the country?
This is the first one. So looking at what we are saying here today, we think that we're going to go far.
For those of us who've never seen a cocoa pod ever in our lives, this is a one-lifetime opportunity for us to have a feel of how cocoa pods look like and indeed how they taste in terms of value addition. As it stands now, the consumption rates of chocolates, that's processed cocoa beans in Ghana, is below 1%, so that exports like this one by the Ghana Export Promotion Authority is aimed at boosting consumption rates, not just in Ghana, but across the African region. I'm Charles Aide for Joy Business.
Now, Ghana's shea butter industry faces the risk of collapse as some foreigners have begun infiltrating the hitherto preserve of local dealers. The local producers are therefore calling for a regulatory body to oversee pricing, marketing and production of shea. Karen Dodo visited the northern region recently and interacted with some of the sector players.
These women of Yongduni are doing what they are best known for, making shea butter. Despite their hard work, which results in quality finished products, finding ready markets was a problem. Rahim Mohammed has been in the business for over 20 years and shares her experience.
To sell the butter we produced, we had to carry it and walk long distances to markets in neighboring towns. That was very stressful and costly for us.
However, for these women, their stories have changed. Ibrahim Jabir Mohammed is also a native of the northern region. He decided to change the fortunes of the women in shea butter production after realizing that big companies were shortchanging them.
Went around and being in that business for some time, or working with that corporate production group for some time, I was well known by the women. And based on my working ethics, it made it very easy for me to be able to mobilize them and then bring them together to, train them. And they also bought into the idea that, okay, before we even proceed, we need to work on our quality first, before we can say that, okay, we have a very quality product that we need to sell out to customers.
Now the women are guaranteed a ready market whenever they produce and are able to make profit from their trade through rideshare when Jabiru packages and finds buyers for them.
Previously, getting buyers was a problem. Now, thanks to rideshare, we are able to make enough money to support our husbands in providing for our families.
For now, business is good, but Jabiru tells me that the growing demand from foreign nationals is causing some nut sellers to improvise to meet demand. He says this could in the long run tarnish the image of the Ghanaian shea butter industry.
Due to the fact that these foreigners come and regulate the pricing for us, it has made some of the processors of the nuts lazy. So they don't actually process the nuts according to how they are supposed to process it in order to ensure the quality of the butter. So they go to the market to buy the nuts, thinking they are buying quality nuts, but they come back bringing very bad nuts. And it's all as a result of these international foreigners coming in to buy the nuts.
To protect the industry, they're calling for a regulatory body.
If you go to Europe and then in America, it's a product that is gaining a lot of ground internationally, and people are making huge monies from the sales of shea butter. Shea butter is actually a close substitute to cocoa. People have now gotten to know about that, but the industry here is not kind of like so organized as the cocoa industry is, so making it very difficult for we those trying to establish ourselves or trying to ensure that these women are working. It's very difficult.
Although the export earnings of shea butter continues to grow annually and remains in the top spot among the non-traditional exports, these locals say it might dwindle if much attention is not given to it. People of Yongduni who produce shea butter, like many other communities in the northern region, depend largely on wild-growing shea nut trees like this one behind me. However, their major concern is the lack of price regulation in the shea nut industry. Their concern is how foreign nationals come and buy the nuts at exorbitant prices, affecting them. What they're calling for is a regulatory body that can oversee the pricing of shea nuts so that they can continue with their businesses. Reporting from Yongduni here in the northern region, Karin Dodu for Joy Business.
Now, 38 Ghana, a non-governmental organization, and its counterpart, NorCode, based in Tamale, has launched the Ghana Rural Agric and Cashew Enterprise Project, dubbed GRACE Project, at Damango in the Savannah region. The objective is to strengthen the capacity of farmers to increase yields of cashews, legumes, intercrop, and beekeeping in a bid to contribute to poverty reduction in rural communities within the West Gonja district. Isaac Nonja has sent this report from the Savannah region.
38 Ghana, in partnership with NorCode, a local NGO, and the UK through the Department for International Development, DFID, is funding the project, which will last for 3 years. Research has shown that the global cashew value chain is increasingly dependent on sub-Saharan Africa, where 2 million smallholder farm households produce about 57% the world's cashew crops. But the GRACE project, as part of its concept, will support women and youth to overcome challenges resulting in low yields, as most farmers fall victim to post-harvest losses, limiting their ability to increase productivity. Speaker said the project has also earmarked some 3,600 direct beneficiaries of existing farmers, including women and youth, who will be the backwire of the project.
NorCode and its partners have taken an entrenched position. 1. To support 3,000 existing and interested national farmers in this project. 2. To add additional 600 women and youth on the project, now totaling 3,600 direct beneficiaries.
3-8 Ghana country manager, Mr. Jonathan Naba, said the Ghana Rural Agriculture and Cashew Enterprise project aims to work with 3,000 direct farmers in 120 villages.
For the curtains down on Business Live tonight, many thanks for your company. My name is Emmanuel Apwaji. Have a great weekend.